Good evening, everyone. I'd like to thank you for joining Nadine Bell and myself, Stephanie Tufts, for our presentation of life history as a research method.
A life history is beyond the interview process. It is a thematic, lengthy process taking into consideration a participant's experiences as well as items beyond the individual, such as social and political environments. In chronological order, it notes importance or meanings of events to an individual. Life histories are usually presented in two ways. Present each life history as a specific case, followed by a summary of the critical issues that emerge from the analysis, or present the critical issues supported by narrative experts drawn from interviews and other sources.
So what we've got here are 6 steps to life history, according to Hagemaster from 1992. What has been developed here is a 6-step process to outline the experience of life history research. The first step being the initial knowledge, which essentially outlines what knowledge of qualitative research does the research take with them into the study. Step 2 is a design overview. Within that, there could be a number of pieces, including sample selection, usually a very small but relevant group of individuals, because of gathering and recording and interpreting the data can be very intense and time-consuming, as well as it's typically governed by convenience, opportunity, and then ends up snowballing from there. There's usually a process of establishing rapport within this section, co-constructed journey of exploration between the researcher and the researchee or the participant. Ethics are considered in this section, essentially the ability to elicit highly personal information or potentially revealing illegal or deviant behavior. Researchers have a responsibility to protect the privacy of anyone involved. Also establishing the validity, to ensure the data of the strength of the data is collected over time, questions can be explored and clarified. Hagemaster argues that the intensive interview process and analysis associated with the method lends itself to a high probability of content validity. The third step, or the third section within this, is the exploration of the literature, being a circular step with feedback, with field work. Gathering and the process of gathering and analyzing evidence should be done simultaneously. So within the field work, it's a circular step with the literature. As the researcher conducts interviews and reviews the literature, they move into step 5. Most common techniques for gathering life history data is to interview the respondents. It could be instructed interviews, open-ended interviews. It requires active listening techniques and conveying an understanding of the respondent's experience through empathy. The 5th step, narrowing the focus, is also obviously supported by steps 3 and 4 to ensure that the focus is relevant and structured. And then finally, the 6th step being the data analysis, which is obviously analyzing the data that's been provided, drawing conclusions. This is often done through a process of coding. A separate argument or separate presentation of how life history research is processed is outlined by Gurmeetan from 2013, and essentially outlines 5 positions that the professional researcher must consider while doing the research. The first position being the professional researcher and that of an amateur of life who is being discovered by the researcher. Second position being communication between the sender or the storyteller and the receiver, which is the researcher. The third position is the teller of a story and a listener. Essentially here the story is just that. It's simply a story being told. The fourth position would be concerns regarding content or subject of the story, essentially being that the teller tells a story about a life and the researcher is the creator of a life story. So it's a separation between the two roles. And the final position to be considered according to Gurmeetan is that the consideration of the researcher's own life story and the potential for that influence on the outcome of the life story being created has to be there in order to make the life history research more valid and reliable. Essentially, for the purpose of this, in my own words, I just essentially brainstormed this to be the purpose of the goal of life history research is to investigate and inquire to one individual's experience within a particular context to identify potential areas for engagement, to use a person's experience, their history, their position, and life status, as defined by them, in correlation with literature review and research, as well as to identify a potential area for improvement with rich quality and personal input. So all of the components of a person, but also their social being, contributes to what a life history research method would need to include. It's to challenge existing assumptions, develop an intimate familiarity with specific issues, gain insight, understanding the sequencing of events such as domestic violence, adaptation to disability and drug use. It's a very holistic approach, so you're considering all aspects of the person and a situation in relation to the research being conducted, as well as links to subsequent actions and theoretical perspectives with personal experiences all included.
The life history method adds value to analysis, as it is a continuum between what are considered to be quantitative and the qualitative extremes of life course research. It can complement quantitative data by providing context and depth. Data collected strategies useful in research, theory development, and clinical practice. The biographic interview, a form of a life history, has been used extensively by adult developmental theorists, including Erickson and Levison. Healthcare providers use brief life histories to note important events related to physical and mental health. In the education field, life histories can be used to investigate pedagogies and beliefs about classroom instructions.
Some of the benefits include revealing the mundane, informing theoretical assumptions, reinterpreting new knowledge, developing contextual clarity, as well as enhancing subjective awareness of others. Each of these points has critical pieces to them, revealing the mundane being essentially allowing perceptions about the ordinary lives to become less ordinary. Informing theoretical assumptions enriches general understanding, but provides singular examples of experienced lives that may not fit within assumed theories concerning the relationship between people and organizations. When we reinterpret new knowledge, it becomes comprehensive and detailed. Data about the lives of respondents can be revisited and reinterpreted as new knowledge or new theories are discovered. As well, contextualized and historically grounded, this allows the reader to interpret policy decisions in human terms instead of framed only with economic, legal, or other research terms. And finally, by enhancing subjective awareness of others, we possess a literary and rhetorical style that makes them accessible to a wide audience, and as such, they help facilitate better understanding about the untidy complexity of human decision-making.
Okay, so as for life history constraints, it is very time-consuming, and because of the time constraint, there's usually a small sample size. Bias can arise from the respondent, from the researcher, or as a result from the interaction between the researcher and the respondent. There can sometimes be an ethical dilemma of being an insider, as it is the challenge of unintended positioning and disclosure of data. This refers to the researcher status within the organization and how one's position within that organization may influence how others respond to your study. It's often criticized for failing to pass tests of methodological rigor, and sometimes there's a potential challenge of presenting this research as a proposal before an IRB, and it has been well documented and indicates the possibility that life history researchers must be prepared to justify in greater detail their chosen method of research other than relying on more conventional approaches.
And finally, in conclusion, some of the key points of the life history research method are that it adds value to analysis and to support a quantitative research method. There are benefits and constraints that we've outlined, and there are significant contributions to educational research by providing students and or teachers accounts of experience related to learning. Specifically, there's two authors, Choi and Woods, who outline specific studies in relation to this. As well, there's an ability to examine educational research from a cultural perspective. Marion outlines in 2002 a way of examining how Malaysian students and adult students' cultural perspectives influenced how they perceive and access education in their adult life. So there's lots of opportunities within this life history experience and research to conduct and contribute to our educational and adult education experiences. Thank you for listening to our presentation, and I hope you enjoyed.